First things first, my name is Jenna Wolf. His name is Hall of Famer Chris Carter. His name is Nick Wright. Happy Tax Day, everybody. Get everything done? Feel good? What?
No.
No? Well, you have time. I think you have till, like, the end of the day. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Happy Tax Day.
Is that not? No?
I don't know. Happy.
Is it nerdy that I get mine done so early that I can say Happy Tax Day to everybody?
No. That's what you should be doing.
Thank you.
Professional that you are. Yes, absolutely.
How's everybody?
Oh, a little shade thrown my way at 6:31
bit.
a.m. Like Chris Carter's done his own taxes in 30 years.
Wait, our own taxes?
No.
No.
No. Thank you, Jen.
I just
knew
went
exactly
to see Justin a month ago, so I felt good about things.
Oh, shout out to Justin.
Shout out to Justin. Way to go. You guys see that game last night?
A couple good games
Far
last
different
night.
narrative than we saw the first time these two teams played. Let's
Absolutely
talk about
right.
it. Some drama in the NBA. Game 2 between the Sixers and the Heat. Sixers blew them out in Game 1, so this shouldn't have been an issue, except that it was an issue. Dwyane Wade of old stepped up, pouring in 28 points. Sixers fall to the Heat. First loss in over a month for them. No Joel Embiid again last night, still nursing a broken face. After the game, he Instagrammed, quote, "I'm expletive sick and tired of being babied." Remember, Joel Embiid hasn't played since March 28th and cleared the concussion protocol before Game 2, although he's still not medically cleared to play basketball. Brett Brown addressed the situation after the game.
He just wants to play basketball. He wants to be with his team. He wants to play in front of the fans. He wants to see this through. And when he's not able to do that, he gets frustrated. And I respect his frustration. It's born out of competitiveness, and it's born out of him wanting to be with his team.
All right, we'll get to the game in a second. But, Cece, let me start with you first. Do you think the Sixers are being too cautious with Joel Embiid?
No, I mean, he just passed the concussion protocol. Now, if we were talking about the previous injuries, his overall development, yeah, you might be able to say, yes, they've been very slow in letting him get to full strength before they let him get to back-to-back games. But, no, he's got a facial fracture, and he just passed the concussion protocol, I think, on Sunday. It's Tuesday. So, no, they're doing exactly what they should be doing. It's not, would we be asking this question if Philadelphia had handled their business last night? No, that wouldn't be the narrative to the game. Is Philadelphia, their handling of Joel Embiid, they're up 2-0. Is that? No, that wouldn't even be part of the storyline. But because they lost, and Joel Embiid says, like any other competitive athlete, I wish I could be out there. And that competitiveness is not just based on what he's done this season, but it's his lack of being involved with his team the last 4 or 5 years. What did he do at Kansas? He was injured. He couldn't achieve it. He couldn't go to NCAA. He couldn't dominate the way he went. What did he do coming into the NBA? He had to sit out. Yes, they've been very cautious as far as and slow to let him get back onto the court. And then now they're having the best season they've had in a long, long time in Philadelphia, getting them back into the playoffs, winning 17 in a row. Who wouldn't want to be involved in that? So, no, Joel Embiid is doing what he's supposed to do. As an athlete, he's frustrated because it's prime time, and it's time for him to shine. He's not able to be there with his teammates, and the organization is doing what's in the best interest of Joel Embiid, and they have done it the right way. People question them. They've questioned them for years. I support Philadelphia in what they're doing with the time frame of Joel getting back onto the court.
And listen, I understand why people initially were skeptical about how cautious they were with Embiid. He missed his first 2 seasons. 2 seasons missed. Year 3, he played 31 games. And then all of a sudden this year, they were like, he's not going to play back-to-backs. People thought he might not play more than 50 games. And now he's going to either come in first or second in Defensive Player of the Year. He's one of the best players in the league already. And by the way, that process, to use a bit of a buzzword, has been proven to be the right one for them. They were worried Joel Embiid could become Greg Oden. The history of guys that big with that type of injury is terrible across NBA history. That's why coming out of Kansas...
Yeah, not only Oden, but also Sam Bowie was drafted the same year Michael Jordan was drafted in front of Michael Jordan. Before him, Bill Walton. Big guys with bad feet. It's not a great combination.
Yao Ming, like the guys who have had Hall of Fame level careers cut short that we weren't able to see their full everything from them. So like the other aspect here that people have to, I think, recognize is when this happened, we were told 2 to 4 weeks. And I know sports fans and athletes as well always focus on the first number. If it's 4 to 6 weeks, we're like, so what's happening in 4 weeks?
Right.
If it's 2 to 3 months, what's happening in 2 months? 2 to 4 weeks, we're like, oh, 2 weeks. 2 weeks is the start of the playoffs. Tomorrow will be the 3-week mark. So tomorrow we are just halfway through the window. So the Sixers saying we are going to be cautious with our guy has been, up to this point, the right thing to do. And people do need to recognize, when you mentioned coming out of Kansas, Cece, there's a reason he went third in the draft instead of first. He was clearly the most talented guy. People were concerned about his health. I know this is a different type of injury. This isn't a foot injury. It's a facial fracture. But you don't want to rush a guy back, and he's never played with the mask. They're like, oh, he can do shooting. Can he get bumped? Hassan Whiteside, can he deal with a couple elbows? Can he deal with the things you're going to have to deal with in a playoff game?
All right, so let's talk about how he factors into what happened last night. Sixers won big game one. We assumed this was going to be a rout. It almost looked easy. They didn't have Joel Embiid. Game two, they still don't have Joel Embiid. Everything looked different. It seemed like it was because of Dwyane Wade. What did you see last night? What was the difference?
Well, last night in watching the game, it made me go back to what were we thinking before the series started. And we thought that they might struggle a little bit, especially without Joel Embiid. But they come out, they blitz Miami in the third quarter, because a lot of people forget at halftime the Sixers were losing. So Miami did match up with them over a good part of that game, but people saw the end result. Now they start talking about looking ahead, because this is a young team. They start looking ahead, start potentially talking about a sweep, and then they ran into Dwyane Wade. So you can criticize Philadelphia for not being able to get it done, but Dwyane Wade had one of the historic performances that we've seen in the playoffs, the best that we've ever seen from a Heat player coming off the bench, and without that, they don't win that game. So that's what I saw, a young team who ran into a guy who's got championship pedigree, championship experience, and he gives them a lift like they've never had in all the Heat playoff games. And I'm telling you, as a season ticket holder for a long time for the Heat, to say Dwyane Wade played better than anyone that's ever come off the bench, that's the type of performance it took to Miami to get the series tied up 1-1.
All right, so from the Sixers' perspective, I'm going to get to D. Wade in a moment, because everything CeCe said is correct there, and I think we can amplify it a bit even more. This series should be 1-1. Just look at the three-point shooting. In Game 1, the Sixers were unconscious, and they won the game going away. Yesterday, they couldn't hit a shot, and they were trailing for the entirety of the second half. They had one run that D. Wade ended, which we'll show you how he ended it in a second. But, you're 17 of 27 from three, then you're 7 of 36 from three. Guess what? Usually, things kind of, regress to the mean. They did it real quick. So this series should be 1-1. And the Sixers are not a drastically better team than Miami when Joel Embiid's not out there. No. It's about a coin flip if Joel Embiid's not out there. The reason I think people were so confident after Game 1 is people were believing, well, Embiid will definitely be back at least for Game 3. The Sixers just blew him out of the water. But now we don't know if he's going to be back for Game 3. We also saw that Justice Winslow can guard Ben Simmons a little better than we saw in Game 1. There were some things there. But the story's different this morning if the Sixers execute that comeback. They were down 16. They end up going on a run. They cut it to 2 points. And D. Wade had a brilliant first half. But then he had a quiet second half. In the first half, he was 8 of 9 for 21 points. The one missed shot was a 2-for-1 three-pointer that he took just because the math said you should. Wasn't a good shot. Or wasn't a high percentage shot, I should say. And so let's show the audience how Dwyane Wade saved this game. The Sixers have cut it to 4. Cut it to 2. They have all the momentum. There's 4 minutes left. There's D. Wade stripping the ball and then getting a dunk. Now it's a 4-point game. Next time down the court, who orchestrates the play? D. Wade from 32 feet away with a brilliant pass after stepping away from the pick. Next time down the court, now you're up 6. You miss a layup. Here comes D. Wade crashing in, getting the rebound over a bigger Robert Covington, leading to a Dragic jump shot. Timeout, 8-point game. And it wasn't quite game over, but it felt like game over. D. Wade burst onto the scene in 2003 with a triple-double in the Elite Eight to take Marquette to the Final Four. 2003. It is now 2018, and he was the best player on the court in an NBA playoff game. That is why he's one of the 4 best players in the history of his position, why he's one of the 20 best players in the history of the franchise, and why I'm glad that he gets this final chapter in Miami, that he did go back to Miami, that Cleveland did trade him, and he gets to do this for them. That was an awesome story last night.
All right, this series is tied up. Game 3 is Thursday in Miami. Let's see what happens. Coming up, we'll talk some football. Is the Belichick-Brady controversy a bigger deal than we once thought? We'll talk about that next on First Things First. A little football now, new topic because it's on a new script. Is it possible that the untouchable dynasty that is the Patriots, you know, the one built on team first, paycheck second, you know, the one built on endless practices in the snow and rain, the one built on the gritty, hardcore discipline of Bill Belichick, isn't all peaches and cream? Apparently, there are fractures in the infrastructure in New England. According to reports, Tom Brady is now at the, quote, center of conflict with Bill Belichick. And that is spreading throughout the team. Cece, how important is it for Brady and Belichick to be on the same page for it to mean success in the New England franchise?
It's not important at all. I know people might be amazed, but it's not important at all. Tom Brady has made it clear that he's the quarterback of New England Patriots, and that's it. And Belichick is running everything else. You listen to the interviews that Brady through the years, he stays away from personnel decisions. He stays away from his friends that he's lost through the years that have been on the team. You know, he says, I'm going to miss these guys, but he never crosses over in the questioning what Bill is doing. And Bill has the ultimate authority. Tom knows in his relationship with the Kraft and their family that Bill is their guy. All right, now y'all can talk about fractions and everything. Anytime you have a Bill Belichick run organization, man, people aren't going to be happy. But that's what you are trading in for winning. This is what he does. The most difficult place to play in college football is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, with Nick Saban. Like, if you don't want the easy way, you want to learn football at this highest level, go to Tuscaloosa and play for Nick Saban. Now, if you want to learn football at its highest level in the NFL, you need to go to Foxborough and you need to enroll in Bill Belichick. And what you're going to do is you're going to set aside your own personal agenda, and you know that you're going to be taught at a level, and you know you're going to have a chance to win championships. So for me, I don't think there's some type of fraction there. I think that Bill is going to run it his way. That's the way it's going to be done. I think that Tom knows, and that's the only coach that he's dealt with. And Tom's his relationship with the Kraft family, he knows what the deal is. So I just believe this is the normal business of New England. And we just happen to be talking about it now.
When you say he knows what the deal is with the Kraft family, what do you mean?
I'm sure the Kraft and Mr. Kraft has let him know that Bill Belichick is going to be making all the football decisions. He's in control of the roster. He's in control of the food. He's in control of everything within the organization.
Well, the reason I think we're talking about this now is whatever their relationship had been, we are now in a place where Tom Brady's not there for the first day of OTAs. And I know you said yesterday maybe that's happened in the past when we didn't cover it 24/7 the way we do now, but it wasn't as much news. I saw Jeff Darlington report yesterday. He doesn't expect Brady to show up to much of the offseason. Now, that was couched as Brady, if you watch Tom versus Time, he talked a lot about how this offseason is going to be about his family, about how he's going to focus on that. And Bill Belichick, well, he hasn't named Tom Brady specifically. He said day before yesterday, listen, the guys aren't going to be here. I've talked to them. They have other obligations, or, you know, it's no big deal. He basically wanted to minimize it as much as possible. But what I think the Nick Saban comparison's a perfect one. But the difference, of course, is you get to graduate from Alabama. You go there to learn something and hopefully maybe become a pro, and then you go on from there. I think it's really hard to be a Patriot for more than 4 or 5 years. One of the reasons they have constant roster turnover is because that's how they do things. They're always churning the bottom of the roster. Nobody's job is ever safe. But the other reason they have constant roster turnover, I believe, is because the Patriots know that once you've been in that system, that grind, for more than 4 or 5 years, it can start to wear on you. I mean, you can read the quotes from the players that left this year, the quotes from Danny Amendola, even the quotes from Nate Solder, who had been there for quite some time. He'd been their left tackle for nearly a decade, talking about just how taxing it is. We know being a pro football player is taxing for everyone, but how particularly taxing it is in New England. And then you have Tom Brady, who's been there for 18 years, who's been the center of attention there for the bulk of those 18 years. I don't blame Brady at all if this has grown tiresome for him, even if it is a relationship that has worked out brilliantly for all parties.
You'll be shocked to know this is my take. I don't want to hear football players complain because it's too hard, even though you're playing to the very end. You're playing the last game of the season. I don't want to hear you complain that it's too cold outside and we have to practice in the snow, or that you call me out in the middle of a meeting and you say my name. I feel like it's such an honor to be able to play football and then to play at an organization where at any given year for the last 10, 15 years, you're going to be there at the end in some capacity. Mm-hmm. It just makes me feel like you've been given this unbelievable opportunity. You all go in with the same chances every year, and you guys are the ones that are left there standing. You want to complain about money, but don't complain it's too hard, or Bill Belichick is too hard on me, or I can't deal with all the pressures of being here. Because you're one of the few people that get to wear one of those rings that everyone else seems to covet in this league. That, like Chris, you worked your whole career, you never got one of those rings. So I have a hard time processing both. Do you, as a fan, can you understand my perspective?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would love a ring. I wouldn't trade my career for being able to win a ring. But winning a ring is very, very special. That's what they do. Also, besides Nate Solder, the guys who had complaints about leaving New England, I want you to look back and see where they were when New England found them. Nate Solder was a high draft pick, but the rest of the players, Belichick makes these players into something. Look up Deion Lewis's resume, all right? Look up his great stats that he's had absent of New England. Every team in the NFL could have had him.
Amendola as well.
Okay. So all these guys made a constant choice to go somewhere, and the coach actually made them better, and the coach put them in a position that they wouldn't have gotten the paychecks that they got if it wasn't for Belichick. So be careful in your complaining, all right? Be careful, because it is football, and there's a certain amount of sacrifice that's everywhere. So it's not always the grass is greener. There is a different level of commitment. In New England, there's a different level of stress that goes with the job. But all 32 teams, there's a great deal of stress.
And and this won't surprise you, Jenna, I feel totally opposed to where you're at on this. I don't think football players should be considered in a different bucket than any of us in day-to-day jobs. Like, there are plenty of people that choose not to go to the most successful law firm or the most successful accounting agency or the most successful whatever, because these jobs, they enjoy more, they like their bosses more, they like the environment more.
But there's more of those jobs, too, all right? There's more of those jobs going around, all right? There's less football players. It's very, very rare. And Bill Belichick will always be a destination for football players who want to get better.
All right, we got to take a break. Coming up, let's get into some basketball. Was LeBron James too passive in Game 1? Does he need to be more aggressive? His coach seems to think so. Next on First Things First. Finally, the Golden State Warriors, remember when they were bad for a month to end the regular season? That seems like ages ago, as they made quick work of the Spurs in Game 2, winning 116 to 101. The Warriors have now won 9 straight playoff games at home, and both Kevin Durant and Klay seem to be in top form. They both had over 30 points. Nick, and the Spurs put up any resistance against Golden State?
No. I'd love to tell you yes, but the answer is no. They played as well as they could for the first half of that game. I thought the Spurs did well defensively, particularly in the first quarter. They made some shots. Patty Mills had a huge 4-point play to try to get himself going. And I'm like, man, the Spurs played great in that first quarter. They're up 6 points. Like, if you play as well as you can and you're up 6 points, you know trouble's coming. The third quarter has been the Warriors' quarter all year long. And my biggest takeaway from this game is more about the long-term projection for Golden State, because it does seem like Andre Iguodala has figured out this whole pacing thing. Because Iggy he looked washed the beginning of last year and then was valuable in the playoffs. He had his worst shooting year ever this year. Hit 3 huge three-pointers yesterday and was active. Almost had a massive dunk, just missed off the back of the rim. If that is what Iggy is, forget even the shooting, just the athleticism, what Iggy is going to look like these playoffs moving forward, that adds an important, dangerous wrinkle to the most talented team in the NBA.
Yeah, it was nice to see that last night, but also that was just the first quarter. He does play better defense when his shots going in. First quarter, he hit 3 big shots for them. So that's something that we haven't seen. That's something that we must watch going forward. But the question there is, can he do that for 2 months?
Right.
And that's going to be hard to do, given the lack of athleticism he's been able to show throughout the season. But if Clay is able to shoot the basketball like this, and to me, which I thought they would do, I thought they would change the offense. I thought that they would play with more pace and get Kevin Durant involved in the offense more so than they did those last 10 to 15 games of the regular season. And he's the igniter for that offense, especially with Steph not being in the lineup. So Golden State, man, they are an amazing shooting team. You start to see the way they pass the ball. You start to see, wow, why did people fall in love with the way they play basketball the last 3 years? In the last 2 games, we've seen versions of that.
I'm going to ask a ridiculous question just because I feel like I must.
I love it.
If somehow the Warriors figure out what they couldn't figure out down the stretch and start playing maybe a different kind of ball that works without Steph in the lineup, is there any chance there's a little bit of a reintroduction phase when Steph comes back in?
No, because he's been the focal. That's been their status quo for the last 3+ years. So, no, I think they can fall right back into that. The only thing that you might see when Steph comes back in is a regression defensively. They will not be as good. They will not be as long. They will not be as athletic defensively when Steph comes back. But their offense goes from a really good offense to a transcendent how do you stop it offense, so it more than makes up.
At Golden State, it becomes easier for the other 4 guys on the court when Steph steps on the court. And he is the predominant ball handler. So, man, he gets them shots. He gets them more space than they would have if he wasn't there.
And one other note as far as the other 4 guys on the court, nobody misses Steph more than Draymond. Draymond, we have learned, offensively, he's a great defensive player, an all-time defensive player. But offensively, when Steph's not out there, he is a total negative who has not, he's so used to playing with Steph the last few years that his offensive game has not adjusted to playing without Steph Curry. We saw that again yesterday. It didn't matter, but he wants Steph back as much as anybody.
All right, let's move on to the Cavs. They trail the Pacers in their opening round series 1-0 as they prepare for Game 2 on Wednesday night. No pressure on them, only expected to make the finals for the 4th straight season. LeBron had a triple-double in Game 1 with 24 points, but Coach Ty Lue said he needs more from his star.
He has to be aggressive, set the tone early. You know, we talked about that today also, just being aggressive early, setting the tone, especially for these new guys, bringing these guys along. So he understood that. But once again, he's always a guy trying to get his teammates off early, get them guys going, and then try to fill the game out. But be ready to set the tone game 2.
Nick, would you say that was LeBron James' biggest problem in Game 1, that he wasn't aggressive enough?
Early. I think the key word that he was using there is early, and I think it was the first quarter, and that's where they lost that basketball game. Because you look at the overall totality of the game, you would say, he was driving to the basket repeatedly. He had 14 drives to the basket. That's 2 more than his season average. He was getting to the free throw line a lot. He couldn't hit a jump shot to save his life. Didn't hit a single shot outside of the restricted area. But it was early. They lost the game by being down 33-14 in the first quarter.
He didn't take a shot in the first quarter.
He didn't take a shot till they were down double digits. He didn't make a shot in the first quarter. He was 0 for 3 from the field in the first quarter. So I agree with Ty Lue there, setting the tone early. I understand LeBron's strategy. I think it was, we got a lot of new guys. We got a lot of guys without playoff experience. And for us to do the standard that Chris has been holding him to, because he says it's the standard LeBron holds himself to. Can we win a title? He knows the only shot they have, however small it is if his teammates are flowing by the time they get to the NBA Finals. So tried to get that going early, but it was the wrong strategy for Game 1. They needed him to assert himself in Game 1 from the first 5 minutes of the game. He didn't, and the game got away from them. So what Ty Lue was saying there, I totally echo as far as early. I don't mind late in games, him trying to find open three-point shooters, particularly in a comeback. It's why they needed such a drastic comeback.
I don't mind LeBron starting that way because they've done it and been so successful, so I'm not going to question that. That's easy to do. Look at the game and be like, oh, LeBron should start more aggressive. Well, Kevin Love, Rodney Hood, whoever else on the court, they have to have the same mentality. LeBron, this will be a totally different first quarter. But if he's not able to hit his jump shot, Jenna, it's going to be a long night for the Cavs. So I disagree with Nick that they lost the game in the first quarter. They didn't lose the game. LeBron's inability to hit a jump shot, that's why they couldn't come back, because the only thing he could get was going to the hole. And if he had been able to hit a jump shot, it would have opened up the court, and it might have given the other guys some confidence to get their shot to go in. So, yes, it's easy to look at the first quarter and be like, they were awful in the first quarter, but they got to be better defensively.
Right.
In the first quarter, they got to be more aggressive on the defensive end. But if the other guys don't make shots, if Hood doesn't show up, like if George Hill, what are we going to get from him from a point guard standpoint? If Kevin Love doesn't score in double figures, who are the Cavs going to be?
Well, and listen, we talk about LeBron having a subpar game. He had 24 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists. The reason I bring up the 24 points is this. The other starters combined had 25 points. That's the fewest of any LeBron James fellow starters in a home playoff game ever. So they weren't going, I mean, nobody could hit a shot. All year long, the reason the Cavs had lost games they shouldn't have was their defense. Wasn't the reason they lost this game. It was the reason they were down huge in the first quarter. But if you would have said, hey, Pacers are going to score 98 going into the game, Cleveland would have said, okay, we'll take our chances with that. I'm not worried that LeBron's going to be, you can't hit a jump shot in this series. I will say this. If there is one silver lining for Cleveland, I think the silver lining is potentially, assuming this thing doesn't go 6-7 games, I don't think it will. I think had they come back from that deficit, it would have further set a precedent for the team that's a dangerous one, which is don't worry about it. We got this. And once you get to the next round, what they did against Toronto a month ago was special, coming back from that major halftime deficit. Once you get to the upper echelon of teams in the postseason, Toronto, Philly, whomever they face in the finals, you can lose a game in the first quarter. You can be down 15. If you're down 15 points to Houston, the game's over. I know they were down 30 to Philly and almost came back. That was an outlier, and Joel Embiid wasn't out there.
The other thing, it doesn't make sense for LeBron to play the first 12 minutes. All right, now you talk about they lost the game. LeBron was exhausted after the first quarter. All right? Yeah. It did not make any sense for him to play them first 12 minutes. So in the playoffs, the reason why you don't see great comebacks and everything is because it takes too much energy. It takes too much energy on the defensive end also to try to mount those comebacks. And that's why Cleveland came up short twice in trying to mount comebacks.
The other thing Ty Lue talked about were lineup changes, and he's going to make another lineup change at some point. Hasn't said what it is yet. Do you think they need to? What went wrong with the first lineup change? And like I said, maybe they're better off without actually having
a lineup,
a starting five.
I never liked the idea of Jeff Green as in the starting lineup when you're already also starting Kevin Love. To me, you can't, if you're going to go small in the front line, if you're going to go without a true center, it has to be because you are going all offense. And Jeff Green's not a good enough shooter for me to have a LeBron, Love, Jeff Green starting front court. So I would imagine it's going to be Larry Nance for Jeff Green. The other one that I think is possible is JR for Rodney Hood.
Yeah, that's the one I would go with. I would stay with Jeff Green because I don't think your bench is going to be hurt. I think Jeff Green is a better starter than Larry Nance Jr. Larry Nance Jr. has never been a starter. Him and Clarkson coming off the bench playing together, that tandem coming from Los Angeles, I believe, is a better combination. And Rodney Hood, what is he going to be in the playoffs? Like, we don't know. JR, he's proven.
Right.
LeBron has confidence in him. Kevin Love has confidence in him. So I see them starting, especially if George Hill is still Nick, I see them starting JR at the 2 tonight compared to
tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow night.
But those are it's going to be one of those two or maybe both of those changes. I don't think it's going to be like Calderon in for George Hill unless it's an injury thing. Or it would either be JR for Hood, Nance for Green, or both of them.
Or Calderon for LeBron.
That one I say is unlikely.
Okay. Coming up, where will Dez Bryant play next season?
He's got opinions on that.
Who does? Hey, welcome back to First Things First. Chris Canny is with us. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Jenna, Nick, CC. How's everybody?
We are good. We are still talking about Dez Bryant. You would think that we would have had the story moved on, but yet now
there was major news that moved the story forward on Friday.
Dez now has an idea of where he wants to play, and you might have a stake in this game. Let's go over Dez Bryant's career year by year real quick. So good, great, good, good. Thursday, he thought the Cowboys would ask him to take a pay cut. Friday, Cowboys just cut him. Saturday, onward and upward. The 8-year veteran now looking for a new team. Apparently, the Packers, Saints, Bills, and Ravens are all showing interest, and it looks like Dez Bryant says the Giants are his #1 choice. Not sure how the Giants feel about that. Chris, which team do you think is the best fit for Dez Bryant?
Well, I think that's Dez and a little bit of emotion talking because he wants the opportunity to get back at the Cowboys and play them twice a year. But I don't think that's going to happen realistically when you look at those NFC East teams. I don't think there's any room on their rosters for Dez Bryant in terms of what he brings to the table. And also, you got to consider the culture when you try to absorb what comes along with Dez Bryant. Not saying that he's a problem child, but you do realize that he's a high-strung player. He plays with a lot of emotion. So that's something that you have to plan for and you have to have an answer to. And so most locker rooms can't handle a guy like that. But some of the teams
Two guys.
Most locker rooms can't handle a guy like that. You're saying with Odell there in New York.
Two guys,
already.
yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Two guys. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
The Rams or anything.
Yeah, you know, exactly.
Right?
But listen, he's not going to end up with the NFC East team. But of the teams that are interested, I think the Baltimore Ravens make a lot of sense. If you look at Joe Flacco the last couple of years, he hasn't been very good. Last year, the Ravens were toward the bottom of the league in touchdown receptions. They had 20 last year. That was 23rd. So Dez Bryant, adding him alongside with Michael Crabtree, I think that would be an improvement in terms of the talent on that roster at that position. Also, some places, San Francisco would make a lot of sense when you start talking about a big body wide receiver playing alongside Marquise Goodwin and Pierre Garçon. That would make sense a little bit as well. The Seattle Seahawks, they lost one of their big targets in Paul Richardson in free agency to the Washington Redskins, so it would make sense. And, of course, there's a little bit of similarities in the offense that they run in Dallas under Scott Linehan and what they would be running in Seattle with Brian Schottenheimer, that Air Coryell offense. So I'm starting to look at opportunities, fit, and then, of course, teams that have cap space that are going to be able to pay debt.
Seattle also lost Jimmy Graham, which is a noteworthy. There's going to be some balls to catch. It's fun. I'm not disagreeing with you for the sake of disagreeing with you. I have written down on my notes right here, Ravens are, then in all caps, awful fit. And so here's why I don't like the Ravens. I think Joe Flacco is done as even an above-average NFL quarterback. I just think that there's no – I think there's been no – what are you laughing about, Cece?
Joe Flacco is definitely not done. Like, as a quarterback?
I didn't say as a quarterback. I said...
Listen, the contract said he ain't done. They can't get rid of him right now.
Right. And so, but as an above-average NFL quarterback, I don't think Joe Flacco will have another year where we look at him and say he was one of the 15 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't, and where if he does have that year, it's going to be based on the strength of his long ball, the Mike Wallace pass, the pass interference pass, and I don't know that that is a great, perfect fit for Dez. One of the teams that was listed that is interested, though, is the team that I said Monday morning would be the team that I think would be the best-case scenario for the player, and that's Green Bay. Not just because they have the best quarterback in the world, not just because they got $14 million in cap space, but also because we've talked a lot about how when you're building out your wide receiving core, Cece, you mentioned you want to be like a basketball team. You want a point guard, a shooting guard, a power forward. They don't have the power forward. They got 5'10" Randall Cobb. They got 6'1" Davante Adams. They don't have a big guy and a big super athletic guy. And when we've talked about where Dez was at his best, when CeCe said yesterday, Tony Romo made Dez Bryant to a degree. It was, he's not open, but I'm going to throw him open. I am going to, even though he didn't get great separation, I'm going to trust my ability to make this play and the improvisation, running around and him breaking loose downfield. Nobody in the world is better at that than Aaron Rodgers. And they obviously lost Jordy Nelson. So for all those reasons, I think Green Bay would be the ideal fit for the player and for the team.
What factors into the fit for Dez Bryant? What do you think needs to is it the quarterback? Is it the offensive system? What do you think is the best thing that he needs to factor
That's
in?
a great question, Jenna, because as a wide receiver, more so than any other position, that we're system players. And not only do we need a play caller, not only do we need other assets, being a tight end, other receivers. If I'm a possession receiver, I need someone with speed. I also need a slot receiver. And the quarterback's ability, how much of the offense are they going to allow the quarterback to do to operate? So, Jenna, that's the heart of the matter. People are talking about cap space. People are talking about fit. To me, I must analyze who Dez Bryant is, all right? Dez Bryant is not a fast receiver. So some of the places that I would debunk him going to would be I don't see him going to Baltimore. And the reason why is because Michael Crabtree is not a speed receiver. Joe Flacco is a deep ball thrower. That's where he has his most success. So if Crabtree and Dez Bryant were on the same team, they would have the slowest starting 2 wide receivers in the NFL. Now, there's some other things I disagree with. New York Giants, Brandon Marshall, good friend of mine. I believe Dez Bryant is a better football player than him right now. So if they were looking to get a big body to go opposite of Odell, forget the personalities. Dez Bryant would be a person that I would talk to. Now, would I be able to afford him? Do I want to bring his attitude into the locker room with Odell Beckham? And it might be good for 14 games, but it wouldn't be good those 2 Dallas games. Because in those Dallas games, he would want the ball every time. So I believe it's something you should look at, but I don't believe it's something that is a great fit. The best fit for him, to me, is where no one is mentioned but you, is San Francisco. They have the speed receiver. They also have the cap space. They also have a up-and-coming bright quarterback. But more importantly, they have the offensive mind in Kyle Shanahan that can call plays to be able to dictate what he wanted Dez to do. Now, that is a wide receiver-friendly offense. I believe Dez is a better receiver than Pierre Garçon at this point in his career. So, for me, the things that I look at, Seattle, no. San Francisco, I believe, is the best fit for Dez. Now, he also, money-wise, how much money does Dez want? Because I believe that will have something to do with where he ends up.
Yeah, you're talking about you got to have the money to pay Dez Bryant. It comes down to teams with cap space, and the teams that we mentioned, even though we might not necessarily agree on fit,
right,
are all teams that have cap space. So it's going to have to be a situation where the dollars and cents make sense to Dez Bryant's camp.
What type of contract do you? I think he's going to sign a 1-year deal. I don't know. What do you? I would imagine 1 year, $9 million is about where it's going to fall.
Well, I mean, if Michael Crabtree is making $7 million a year, you would think that Dez Bryant would make slightly more than that. So maybe it's a $9, $10 million deal, somewhere in that range over a couple of seasons, 2 to 3 years.
All right, Chris, stick around. Coming up, how big of a deal is the reported rift between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady? Next on First Things First.
This is Nick Wright, and I wanted to tell you that this episode of the First Things First podcast is brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings. There's a new boss in town at Buffalo Wild Wings, and he deals in bacon. It's the Bacon Boss Burger, featuring bacon 3 different ways and a blanket. I said a blanket of white cheese sauce. And he's joined by other new favorites like the smothered cheesesteak quesadilla, sweet chili shrimp, and Alaskan Cod Classic. All pair perfectly with a Sam 76, a fruity ale with the crisp finish of a lager. Hurry in today. Try them all before they're gone at Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports, available for only a limited time while supplies last. And please, of course, drink responsibly. Now, back to the show.
Back here, First Things First with Chris Canty. Is there a price to pay for winning? Some of the New England Patriots think so. We've all heard the stories of the tight ship Bill Belichick runs over there, the crazy practices, the calling out of the players, the high expectations, the low paychecks. But they win, and everyone's happy. Or are they? According to reports, Tom Brady is now at the, quote, center of conflict with Bill Belichick. And that has players jumping ship and others like Rob Gronkowski contemplating retirement. Also Gronkowski. Chris, how important is it for Brady and Belichick to be on the same page?
Well, here's the thing. Let's start with this. Most head coaches that are highly successful in the NFL, they're at sometimes can be a jerk. That's just what it is. Out of the 4 head coaches that I played for, 3 of them fit that bill. The 3 coaches that I had that were like that won Super Bowls.
I'm trying
the other guy that we had that was a head coach, he didn't turn out so well as a head coach. So ultimately what happens is you have to have a head coach in place that makes guys have that sense of urgency in the building to take advantage of every single opportunity to get better, because that's the culture that breeds success in our league. You don't want complacency to set in. And that's what Belichick has been great at being able to do. Mm-hmm. And for the most part of his tenure as the head coach, he's had Tom Brady as an ally in making that happen. But now it's gotten to the point where Tom Brady and the rest of those guys on that Patriots team want Bill Belichick to trust them. And at some point, the head coach has to empower his players and allow them to take ownership of the team. It just doesn't feel like Bill Belichick has done a good job of towing that line, and now he's got a situation where the players seem like they're revolting against him.
Well, and I hate to keep bringing up the same instance, but I do think a lot of this has stemmed from the Malcolm Butler situation. And I say that because, not because the players adored Malcolm Butler so much, even though he does seem like he was a very well-liked teammate, but because they ask you to make so many sacrifices. Less money, practice in the rain, practice in the snow, as some of the players we've left said was a pain. The constant browbeating, all of that, right? And guess what, though? We will always put you in position to win. We will always do what is best for the team. We are asking you to sacrifice your personal stats, your personal ego, in lieu of what is best for the team. And if there is the belief, as we've heard from some of the quotes from the players that have left, that, well, all of a sudden the guy making us do that didn't do it himself, all of a sudden that guy put, whether it was a personal conflict, trying to prove a point, a contract battle, whatever it was, in higher priority than doing what was best for the team in the bleeping Super Bowl, well, now all of a sudden, that message doesn't resonate quite as well. Now all of a sudden, that's tougher to swallow. And so I think Bill Belichick for a long time has operated, I mean, you can look at down to the way he dresses. I can be
He's a
this,
phenomenal dresser,
okay,
by the way. I love that cutoff.
I can be this way because I'm better than everybody and because I know better than everybody. The moment there's all of a sudden a slight crack in that armor, I think you start seeing what you said, not quite a mutiny, but you start seeing more of these types of reports this offseason than I would say in the last 4 or 5 off seasons combined.
But Cece argues that it's, well, that it's not a crack in the armor, that it was intentional, that this was the decision that he decided to make for whatever reason, and that's the way he runs the organization.
Yeah, and it's not going to change this offseason. They are not going to have some type of democratic society, like they're going to put together a team council. Like, nothing's going to change. Like, this is not no new news. Like, every good coach I ever had in football, now you can talk about baseball, volleyball, some other stuff. You might have liked them. All my good coaches, I did not like them. My high school coach, I hated him. And on my Hall of Fame speech, he was the most influential coach I've ever had in my life. You know the reason why? Because he told me the things that no one else would tell me. He made me go places that I would never go, psychologically, physically. He made me do things that I didn't think I was capable of doing. And that's what you want from a football coach. When you coach in tennis, golf, badminton, you can have some other type of coach. It can be warm and fuzzy. But Bill Belichick, if I go back and play football, that dude right there, he can coach me. You know the reason why? Because he's going to teach me the game. He's going to give me an advantage when I go onto the field. And also, he's going to police the rest of the team. All I got to do is do my job, show up to work and do my job, and I'm going to get a chance to win me a championship. And for me, that's very important. I can't question how important it is for you, how important it is for you, Nick, but it's important for me. For a guy who spent his life playing pro football, that I would have a chance to win. And Bill Belichick would give me that chance. Would I like everything he did? No, but it would give me the chance to win. And I know it would maximize my talent. It would get the best out of me. And at the end of the day, that's really important to me.
Absolutely, CC, and you said it right there. Coaching, and Tom Coughlin always used to address the team this way. And before he gave us a criticism, he would say coaching is making men do what they don't want to do so they can become what they want to become. And it takes a little bit of a fire breather to be able to get that message across and set the agenda for the team. But there also comes a point where that head coach then has to empower the leaders on that team, and they have to take ownership of it. And I guess that's a fine line, and you're seeing right now where Bill Belichick and Tom Brady aren't necessarily on the same page in terms of Bill Belichick trusting Tom and the rest of the leaders on that team.
Well, that's something, because this is the first time we're talking about him not trusting Bill Belichick or not Tom Brady or not wanting to empower the leaders on his team, because that's never something we've really discussed in the past couple
It's been there. Okay?
Maybe it has.
When Randy Moss left New England, Tom Brady was not happy. Did he go on to have success afterwards? Absolutely. There have been other moves that the players were not happy about. Lawyer Malloy, when they cut him. Richard Seymour, when they traded him. Last year, Chandler Jones gave up on him, sent him off to Arizona.
Jamie Collins,
this is not new. This is the first time we're talking about it.
But what about the friction between Brady and Belichick? Do you think that's new?
No, here's the thing. I think it's becoming a thing because it's been so long with those two at the helm. It's 18 years. Right. And so at some point, you have to trust me that I know exactly what you want, and I'm going to do everything that it takes to put our team in the best position to be successful. And I think that's where the rift comes into play. Not to mention everything that happened with the Jimmy Garoppolo saga and him forcing that trade by making Bill Belichick go to Robert Kraft and say, okay, we got to deal this guy.
Well, and I've heard you talk about, Chris, that there became a point in your career where the coaches couldn't really teach you that much anymore.
No.
Right? I'm correct in saying
yes, absolutely.
Right? There was a point in your career where it was more of a collaborative effort. And I know how highly you regard and how highly you speak of the late Denny Green, because he seemed to embrace that collaborative effort.
Yes.
And that's where I think some of the Brady-Belichick conflict is I don't think Belichick's down for that. Like, I don't know how much more Tom Brady has to learn from Bill Belichick. Like, he is as smart of a football player, as accomplished a football player as we've ever seen. Go ahead.
Every great leader, you're going to have friction with the person who is the general. It is never going to always be nice. Denny Green, had great things to say. Yeah, but there's a lot of things, too, I don't tell you. No reason why? Because they're not good for you to know. All right? There will always be friction. At the top of that, Bill Walsh and Joe Montana. Let's not forget where Joe ended his career. Not only did Joe end his career somewhere else, Jerry Rice. So the greatest that have ever played this game, they have had friction with someone like Belichick, who was over their career. And yes, they had Super Bowl wins together, had done tremendous things together. But yes, when you're to that point, you're going to have some friction at the top. And this is not unusual for me to see what Belichick and what Brady potentially are going through. I don't make it out to be as big as you guys make it out to be. It's the price of doing business with a Belichick, with a Saban, with a Bill Parcells. That's what you're going to get.
The only reason I think that it's becoming a bigger deal, CC, and where I might disagree with you, is because the fact that Josh McDaniels didn't take that Indianapolis coach job makes me feel like at some point Bill Belichick's tenure as head coach of the Patriots is coming, and I think it's sooner rather than later. But the fact that Jimmy G is not in line to be the successor to Tom Brady makes it feel like ownership has sided with the quarterback in saying that they're going to be transitioning from Bill Belichick, but Tom Brady might be around a couple of seasons longer.
This is what Robert Kraft said. He said, we expect Tom Brady to be our quarterback the next couple of years. But he also said on the record that people don't seem to pick up that Bill Belichick can coach here as long as he wants to. Now, to me, that seems like to extend beyond when Brady is going to retire.
All right, Chris, thanks
so much. Great job, man. By the way, congrats
today
to Chris Canty's radio station. Very monumentous. They beat the opposing station in New York City for the first time ever. It's a huge deal. I'm a radio nerd.
Yeah, that's the first time someone congratulated his replacement.
Wow.
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 The other side, first things first.
Hey, man.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.